Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of SPS Spotlight. I'm your host, Azel Kavan, and this week I am joined by Paul Foster. Paul, thank you for being with us today. Paul is the Chief Information Officer for Springfield Public Schools, and he was the one who was the lead in our effort to make sure that our students were ready for remote education and had their computers and systems and programs in place to make that work. So, Paul, take a deep breath, first of all. Let me just start by bringing us back to March, right? When this first happened, and then out of nowhere, we were told that we are now out of school for the rest of the year. And at first, teachers and schools struggled to get paper packets together. But while they were doing that, you and your team were feverishly working behind the scenes to get remote education up and running. And then we were told, lo and behold, we're going to be remote as we start school this year, at least for the first marking period. That's a lot to kind of land on your lap unexpectedly. I will say that we had a technology plan in place for several years before that. Moving to get a laptop into the hands of every student so that it was one-to-one for grades 3 and above. So we were moving along that track, but certainly not there yet. So I just want to hear a little bit briefly from you about what that was like from your perspective and from your team's perspective to actually make this work. How big was that effort?
It was certainly a big effort, and Azel, thanks for having me on. We probably in the first several weeks after we closed on March 13th, we distributed about 10,000 laptops to students and more than 1,000 internet hotspots also to support students who didn't have internet at home. And it was a lot, but as you said, we were fortunate in really two ways. One, I was fortunate in that I'm blessed to have a very good team. And so we had a good team of people working to figure out how to make this work, but also the foresight of the superintendent, the foresight of the school committee in terms of the technology initiative you spoke about. We had about 6,000 students who were already taking laptops home before we closed. And so that was a result of, the initiative you talked about, where 3 or 4 years ago, the school committee appropriated the funding to launch this one-to-one program for students in grades 3 to 12. So that was really helpful in terms of readiness for this to happen. And certainly, compared to some of the districts around us, we had the devices because of that foresight and because of that program. So it was a lot of work to get those laptops in the hands of students. That involved many volunteers, staff at building level going into the school after we closed and standing on the curb, literally, and handing out laptops to families as cars drove in. It also involved partnerships with one of our transportation providers, Vanpool, to deliver laptops to the homes of families who weren't able, for transportation reasons, to stop by the school and pick one up. So it was a lot of work. And I would say even there's also the work that goes on that you don't see. One of the things we had to anticipate was our network was going to be used way more than it had ever been used before. When you go from students and teachers being in the same room to them only being able to connect online, it requires a lot more bandwidth, a lot more devices being connected all at once. And our team did a lot of work on the back end to make sure that we could do that without sort of everything grinding to a halt.
Did we have the bandwidth? Do you have to go out and get the bandwidth? How does that work?
It's a great question. We had, I would say the foresight of the superintendent and school committee. We've made a lot of investments strategically in our technology infrastructure. So we had the bandwidth in March to really be able to make this switch to remote. We did have work to do to optimize it, to make sure that when I say optimize it, I just mean making sure that each individual computer that's on our network is using as little of that bandwidth as possible, so that we can have as many devices as possible on. But I will say the work is ongoing. As we started this year remote, we're looking at potentially doubling our bandwidth because we recognize that our goal is to bring kids back to school. If we can, at least part of the time, we'd like to be able to have them be in school. But that would mean, again, more use of our network. And so we're looking at what we can do to increase the capacity if we bring kids back.
And so in theory, because we closed in March and we made the effort and got more than 10,000 computers out to students who did not have them. You would think that when we started in August or September this year, we were late starting because of COVID, that every student had already been outfitted with a computer. Was that the case, or was there still some work to make sure students had computers?
Yeah, there was definitely more work. In March, what we said to families was, if you don't have a laptop or a device at home that your student can use for remote learning, you can get one from us. At the start of this year, what we said is we wanted everybody who wanted one to have a laptop. And so we probably distributed somewhere between 3,000 and 4,000 more at the start of the school year, beyond the 10,000 we distributed in March and the 6,000 that were already in the hands of students. And of course, as with the start of any new school year, we had new students, so students who were not Springfield Public Schools students last year, and so didn't have an opportunity to get a laptop last year. So there was additional distribution of laptops, as well as more work to ensure internet access. So we're trying to provide up to 3,500 households with at-home internet through Comcast Internet Essentials program. And so again, a lot of credit to our schools. That's been a lot of work at the building level, distributing the laptops, providing families with the code that they need to access that Internet Essentials program. And
so if families are not familiar with the Internet Essentials program, if you are a family and you still do not have Wi-Fi at home, which at this point we think pretty much all of our families have who need to access Internet Essentials have done so, but if not, to contact your school, and your school will provide you with a code that you then contact Comcast with, and then they will begin to walk you through the procedure to get Wi-Fi in your home as part of their education program. So Paul, what number are we up to now in terms of laptops that students have with them in their homes?
We're probably at about 21,000 of our Springfield Public Schools laptops in students' hands. The reason it's not, we have an enrollment of about 25,000. There's sort of two reasons why it's not all the way to 25,000. One is actually for our preschool students, we're going to be providing iPads, and so that they're part of that 25,000. And then we have a subset of our families, all of our software that we use for learning, you can use it from any device. And so we have some families who have just decided they have a computer at home or they have a tablet at home that their student is more comfortable using for school. And so they, for that reason, haven't picked one up from us. And so there's some families who may not have a laptop for that reason. And
how big is the IT staff?
In terms of our staff who are really supporting the student laptops, we actually have about 8 technicians who are really the ones who are responding to questions and troubleshooting as challenges emerge. So if you do the math on that, it is certainly challenging, because each of our technicians, if you average it out, is probably supporting between 3,000 and 4,000 laptops.
Which is one of the reasons why you initiated the movement towards a help desk, a helpline, a third party who's been briefed in all Springfield Public School technology matters to assist families when they're having issues. So that has hopefully broadened up the lines and the availability to a quicker response time to our families.
That help desk that's being provided by a partner of ours, and folks can call and get help, and they've been able to help a lot of our families just remotely with a laptop issue, and they can walk them through how to fix whatever the issue is. But they're fielding between 600 and 1,000 calls every day from families in Springfield, and in most of those cases are able to resolve whatever that challenge is. So that's been great.
Wow, that's a lot. So what are some of the, I guess when you think about 21,000 laptops, there's going to be some issues. I mean, in the best case scenario, you're going to have some technology issues. What has risen to the top as maybe the most common ones that you're hearing about?
I would say there's 2 that have been the biggest. One is something that was out of our control, and we've been able to implement a fix, but it caused a lot of issues for families. Computers get updates regularly, and it turns out that actually, unfortunately, the weekend before school started for us, there was an update from one of the software vendors for the software on our computers, and it actually broke some of the audio and video capability on just some of our student laptops. So a portion of the laptops in the hands of our students. And so students were getting this experience where the video would shut off. They'd be on a Zoom call or on a video call, and the video would shut off, or it would even force their computer to shut down in the middle of a video call. And so again, I am blessed with my team. They were able to identify that and actually create what we call a patch, which is just a way to repair that issue within a day or two. And then, but unfortunately, it still meant that families had to call the help desk to identify that they were having this issue. And then the help desk would walk through applying that patch or applying that fix. So that was a big one because it did affect a number of machines. And certainly because we're doing remote learning, the ability to use the video and the audio on your computer is pretty essential. And so we think we have the vast majority of that issue has been resolved. So I would say for anybody who's watching it is still having audio video issues, I would encourage calling the 866 number on our website for the help desk because they can walk through how to fix that issue. And then I think the other is our devices. This is really true with all computers, but our devices are really, they're at their happiest when they're on the Springfield Public Schools network. And so one of the things that was a challenge for some families is a lot of our students who got laptops last spring, they had those laptops all summer, but they may not have been using them as much over the summer because they were, it was summer, they weren't doing remote learning anymore. And so for some of our students and families, when they powered up their laptop on the first day of school, they experienced some challenges, right? So it might've been the case that updates that their computer needed over the summer, it didn't get downloaded and installed because it wasn't being used very much. And so one of the things we encourage actually, when you're having some challenges with your computer, the very first thing you should do every time you're having a problem with your computer is just restart it. And the way you do that is you go to the power button and there's an option to restart, and it fixes many, many ills when you restart your computer. The other thing we have told families, and it's going to sound funny, but I mentioned that our computers are set up to really, they work best when they're on our network because they get all of the different settings and all of the different software that they need. So another thing that has solved problems for families is just driving or walking to your nearest Springfield Public School. It could be when you're picking up meals during, as part of the meal program, and, turn on your computer, connect it to the Springfield Public Schools or the SPS Wi-Fi, and just restart it once or twice. And oftentimes, if the computer is behaving badly, if it's having kind of problems that don't make a lot of sense to you, often it will download an update or a patch or some kind of setting that will resolve that issue. So I know it sounds funny to say you walk to the nearest school and your computer might fix itself, but the reality is it actually kind of works.
Excellent. There's just so many factors. There's factors beyond our control, software updates, there's just so much that we can't control. And I know your team has really, really put in an effort to do everything on the parts that they can control. There are videos that your team has created that's available on the Springfield Public Schools website that kind of helps parents troubleshoot some of the more common issues that they may be having. You've really worked hard to make sure that it's accessible for parents of different, who speak different languages. And you've offered workshops. And so I know that your team is really doing everything. It's a monumental task. It's a monumental task. And, congratulations to getting it out there and getting it done. I congratulate you because it's out there and all of our students are learning from home.
Well, no, thanks, Giselle. And I really should also say thanks to our students and parents, because I know in these first couple of weeks when people have had issues, sometimes they've had to wait longer than they might have liked before we've been able to help. And I think the new help desk has certainly helped with that. But I appreciate the patience and cooperation we've gotten from students and families as they've kind of worked with us to help us figure out how to solve for some of the problems they're experiencing.
Yeah, and I would even go a little step further and just remind parents, I've been saying this a lot lately, to just take a deep breath. I think technology makes a lot of people nervous anyway. And so when it doesn't go exactly as planned or the way that you think it should, the blood pressure immediately shoots up, especially when it's your child's education that we're talking about. But just remember the tools that Springfield Public Schools and our IT department have put in place to help you through this and to help you troubleshoot. And make use of those tools because we are in this together. So I want to thank you, Paul, for being our guest today. I learned really some interesting things. I had heard about the audio and video problems that some families were having on the first couple of days of school, and then to find out today that it was a software update that caused it. So, I learned something new every day at this job anyway. So again, I'm Azelle Kavan, and this has been SPS Spotlight. Please stay tuned to this channel for more episodes in the future.